about to join Don Neuen, co-host of Cowboy Logic Radio, and Denise Simon, host of the Denise Simon Experience, for a weekly situation report, or SITREP. 18 hours a day, Denise Simon lives her life as an Intel Analyst. 18 hours a day, Don Neuen lives his life in the world of rock and roll. 1 hour each day, Neuen receives a daily SITREP from Simon. Welcome to the Drive Time Situation Report. Fasten your seatbelt. You're now in Don Neuen's car, and he is calling in for his SITREP.
Hello.
What's up, Denise? It's your buddy Don.
Hi, Don.
Hi, Denise. Merry Christmas to you.
Merry Christmas and Happy Kentucky.
What's Kentucky got to... Well, you'll tell me, I'm sure. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this week's Drive Time Sit Rep with the stellar Denise Simon. On the other end of this conversation, it's your buddy Don Neuen. So, Denise, I'm hoping that you're going to have some good news for us tonight. Please give me some good news, please.
Okay.
Without manufacturing anything.
Okay.
All right, well, before we get started, if we got any new listeners, they're probably wondering what the hell kind of radio show this is. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm in my car. I'm driving home after a day at work. I've called into Denise Simon, who answered the phone and has put us on a recording device. So she's recording this conversation. That is this radio show, the Drive Time Sit Rep. And we wish each other Merry Christmas every week.
Because we
can. That's right, because during the 8 years of the Obama reign, we were saying that while hiding in shadows, much like the illegal immigrants that were running around. Right, Denise?
Yes.
People.
Yes.
Before we get started, let me ask you something, Denise, unrelated. Have you ever eaten at a Marco's Pizza?
No.
We find them to be very good. You should try. Just like you should try Culver's. But if you get a Marco's Pizza, make sure you get one that's got the meatballs on it.
Okay, good to know.
All right, you want to know what I get on my Marco's Pizza?
Sure.
I get extra cheese, I get Italian sausage, I get pepperoni, I get hamburger, and I get meatballs. It's a la carne kind of a pizza.
It's all meat and cheese and bread.
Well, that's what I just said. That's Spanish for meat, la carne. Do you like how I roll the R's when I say that?
Good work.
Do I remind you of Ricardo Montalban when he's talking about rich Corinthian leather?
I don't think so.
Damn. All right, I'll try harder. Hey, one last question. You want to know what Donna gets?
Okay.
She gets a veggie calzone, no la carne.
Oh.
Talking about a boring meal. Ugh. Man, but she does get extra sauce. All right, so now, ladies and gentlemen, now that you got all that unbelievable, useful information, Denise is going to timestamp this week's show so that you know exactly when this conversation has taken place. Back to you, Denise Simon.
Okay, well, it's 8:26 p.m. Eastern on the 4th day of November in the year of our Lord, 2019.
Awesome. And despite my silliness, you do that with a very serious kind of an attitude. Now, at the beginning of the show, Denise, I asked for some good news. Now, you can save it till the end of the show if that's what you'd like to do. Please tell me that people like John Brennan, Clapper, Yates, Loretta Lynch, and the ilk are going down. Please tell me that you think that might happen.
I can't do that.
But can you tell me you'd like it to happen?
I would. There's
Right,
several others too.
Is there? Well, yeah, I just stopped right there. Is there like a snowball in hell's chance? I mean, do we have a chance of any of these people going down?
No.
None whatsoever.
No. They might get a fine, but that'll be it. There'll be a plea deal.
Man, that's disappointing. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks for listening tonight. I'm going to drive off a damn bridge.
Well,
I really didn't. I didn't want to hear that.
I know you didn't, but here
I got more faith. I got more faith in Barr and Durham than plea deal BS.
Well, in full disclosure, I'm reading two books at the same time. I almost have to go back and forth, but I'm reading Andy McCarthy's book, Ball of Collusion. And Lee Smith, who I have been following for quite some time, he just came out with a book titled The Plot Against the President, the true story of how Congressman Nunes uncovered the plot against Trump, the biggest political scandal in American history. Now, both books, between the two of them, I'm looking at about a little over 800 pages. So it's like...
So it's like one Trevor Loudon book.
Yeah. And what's fascinating is Lee Smith's book. I'm on, I don't know, chapter 8 already. I just downloaded it this morning. And I got to tell you that the way he writes it, he goes so fast. It's like, slow down, dude. He's got a very different writing style than Andy McCarthy. But essentially what Lee Smith has done is he took a long time meeting with Nunes. Nunes has got the goods. Nunes has had the goods. And Nunes is playing a lot of things close to his vest. He will let little snippets out very carefully and cautiously, but apparently he's laid it out for Lee Smith in the book. So when you were listing off a few people, two people that are very key in all of this is three: Susan Rice, Lisa Monaco, and Dennis McDonough. So, and then I got another. I'm going to believe this, but I got another book in the mail yesterday that I got to read, titled "In the Cauldron: Terror, Tension, and the American Ambassador's Struggle to Avoid Pearl Harbor." Remember that we sort of knew that we had some whistleblowers that the matter of being attacked in 1941 was going to happen, and a lot of people ignored that. Well, this cat that wrote this book, Lee Paper, it's got about 500 pages of describing all of that. So
that's interesting.
I bet it's absolutely fascinating. So
yeah, but here's the thing. Here's the thing, Denise. You're reading 800 books between Lee and Andy McCarthy, who are discussing the greatest scandal, if not the greatest, one of the greatest scandals that's hit our country.
Yep.
And everybody's going to walk.
Well, look.
That is so broken. There's not even words to describe it.
I know it is. You and I think talked about this a little bit last week, and that is apparently Durham has offered McCabe. Of course, McCabe's denying it, but he offered him a. Let me see how they actually put it. Kind of a Durham McCabe deal. Let me see how they actually put it. Something like a pre-trial. McCabe's legal team denied a claim that the former FBI director was offered a pre-indictment plea deal from the U.S. District Attorney John Durham, who was conducting the inquiry. So that kind of tells you that if there's some truth to this, now this came from the Washington Examiner a couple days ago. This kind of tells you that Durham is on the case, and he apparently went to McCabe's lawyers and said, okay, do you guys want to, cop a claim or cop a plea now before there's an indictment? And McCabe's denying that happened. I don't know who, how true some of this is, but apparently this happened last week.
Well, maybe he's denying it because he doesn't want to die.
Well, that tells you if there is a pre-indictment plea deal, then that kind of tells you that plea deals are how you just deal with things. You understand what I'm saying?
Well, I do, but I also would think that might be that there are bigger fish they want him to fry.
Well, as finishing chapter 7.
I mean, how many plea deals do you think went down prior to El Chapo going to prison?
Well, I think.
Or what about Gotti?
I know that they always want to do plea deals, and then they can supersede those. They can keep adding. The more they find, they can keep adding things. And sometimes they have to go to trial many times. When it comes to mafia, they were some of those cases they were paying off juries and whatnot, and judges and so forth. So,
well, here's the deal. Here's the deal, Denise. I pray to God that because this is such a high-profile situation, and because it is being watched so carefully by everybody on the planet, that there will be justice served, and it's not going to end up being 25 or 30 plea deal, slap on the wrist, BS crap that we see so often in government. I'm putting my faith in Durham, I'm putting my faith in Trump, and I'm putting my faith in Barr, that the three of those guys are going to insist on the rule of law being followed. Because if it's not, and all these people walk with slaps on the wrist or fines or ruined reputations and careers, it's not good enough. It's just not good enough. 15 or 20 years ago, maybe. But this cannot end in a bunch of plea deals. It can for the low players that are, quite frankly, rather high-ranking individuals in our federal government. But it cannot be for the big fish. They cannot be immune. The immunity has got to end. And I know you agree with me on that.
I do. I would say when you start comparing the things that the end of the Obama administration was doing and not doing, and I go from 2014 on up to the very moment that Obama left the White House. It's really quite remarkable, some of the things that were going on. And, I've talked about it before, of the well-produced, choreographed operation they did against Kavanaugh. With 1 inch, it could have worked, except that I would say that between Mitch McConnell and Senator Grassley, they weren't going to stand for it. But the choreography to deny a Supreme Court justice a seat on the bench is very different than stopping a elected president and then moving towards impeaching a president for a quid pro quo. Now, I've been doing a little interesting research today, and I really wish we could do some quid pro quo stuff on Obama. Yesterday I wrote a piece because it was the 40th anniversary of the hostages in Iran. And when I wrote the piece, it was quite remarkable how many of those alleged students, if they were really students at the time, the Iranian students, when they stormed the embassy, are sitting in high positions today in the Iranian regime, very high positions. In fact, one of them works for John Kerry's best friend, Zarif. Having said that, we tend to forget that we gave, under the Obama administration with the help of John Kerry, we gave Iran $400 million as the first installment of $1.7 billion in a settlement. There was to be more, by the way, because I think the original settlement was supposed to be around $4 billion. And I cannot believe, with just the Iranian hostage crisis and the fact that those people are sitting in high seats of power in Tehran today, that John Kerry and Obama would ever have done what they did. I mean, it's a mind blow. We got four Americans back. Let's not forget that. And of course, we don't pay for them, but I guess we did, didn't we? We got 4 back, but we gave them 7. Actually, we gave them more, but it's reported, because I wrote about that too. Of record, we gave them 7. We were looking to extradite 14, and we dropped those extradition requests. So,
well, Obama was very good at Common Core math when it came to hostage deals and swapping bad guys.
Well, yeah, and nobody even mentions Bo Bergdahl anymore.
That's one of the things I was referring to. How's that schmuck doing these days?
I have no idea. But I'm going to take you back a little bit on the quid pro quo, because I don't know that you can go back and punish a former president in any form or fashion. But I was looking at 2 articles today, both written in 2014. One is where Biden was the lead envoy at the time to Ukraine. So that would have been designated by Obama, because, I mean, a vice president isn't going to name himself. So he travels on over to Kiev, and the country was in turmoil because of Crimea and because the Russians were making their way into Ukraine, and they're still there today. But Biden says, and I quote, "We stand ready to assist you." And he promised this to the protesters. "Imagine where you'd be today if you were able to tell Russia, keep your gas. It would be a very different world." Unquote. Biden certainly imagined where he and his family would be in Ukraine without Russian gas. His son Hunter has since joined the board of the biggest Ukrainian energy company, Burisma Holding. This is 2014. Biden was not the only well-connected American to join the gas company. Devin Archer, a wealthy investor and Democratic fundraiser with long ties to the U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry, upon joining the board of directors, rejoiced that Burisma Holdings reminded him of Exxon in its early days. The company's portfolio of licenses is well diversified across all 3 Ukraine's key hydrocarbon basins, and they list those. Of course, they're in words I can't pronounce. But so it's really quite remarkable that Biden said this. You can tell Russia, keep your gas. You don't need it. So everything that Biden said today that he didn't know about his son, but he don't talk about his son, is just patently false. This goes back to 2014. Correct. Now, let me look at another one here because I was looking at a Washington Post piece, also written in 2014. April 21st, 2014. Biden arrives in Kiev at the crossroads moment in Ukraine's conflict with Russia, bringing U.S. economic assistance and warnings to Russia's Vladimir Putin that the future intervention in the country's volatile east will come at new costs. So Biden was going to meet with the political leadership, civil society groups, and U.S. diplomats, blah, 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 blah. Senior administration officials spoke on the condition of anonymity to discuss the trip in advance, but the vice president would announce a U.S. support package to benefit Ukraine's economy, energy sector, and political reforms in the run-up to the national elections next month. Mm-hmm. And it goes on to say that Ukraine heads into a May 25 vote, which will help settle the constitutional crisis over the presidency, as violence between Russia groups and Ukraine security forces in the east a threat to the company's territorial integrity. The call for urgent implementation, blah, 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 blah. But then I go down a little bit farther because there's something that Trump said about a month ago that struck me, and it's reaffirmed here in this article because I scroll down. It says, on Tuesday, Biden will discuss, this is in the same article, in 2014, will discuss with Ukraine's acting president and the prime minister political reform efforts that seek to push more power to Ukraine's regional government. The official traveling with Biden said the vice president will listen to additional military aid requests from Ukraine leaders following the administration's decision last week to send non-lethal assistance to Ukraine security forces. Now, what was it that Trump said? Well, Trump said Obama was sending them MREs and pillows, sheets. I'm sending them missiles.
Right.
Mm-hmm. So there's your quid pro quo. They knew about it going back in 2014. In the same article, Don, it says, in addition, officials said teams of U.S. economic advisors will arrive to assist Ukrainian officials using $1 billion in recently approved U.S. loan guarantees in securing a far larger package assistance from the International Monetary Fund. And yet, a week later, here comes little Hunter. Hi, I got a new job on the board.
Yeah, that I'm overqualified for.
Remarkable. There's your quid pro quo.
Denise, we got about a little over a minute before we got to go to the bottom of the hour break. What, in your opinion, what do you feel the objective of the Durham investigation that has now turned into a criminal investigation? What do you think he's being charged with by Barr?
Who? Who's being charged?
Durham. Charged with as in, here's what I want you to do. Instructed.
Oh.
I'm using charged as a
Barr has come out and said, I don't care what he does. I'm just going to make the introductions. You go for it after that.
I get that.
And Durham is an equal opportunity prosecutor, by the way.
I know that.
Okay.
I know that. Well, I tell you what, we'll pick this up when we get back from the break. Ladies and gentlemen, you are listening to the Drive Time SITREP with Denise Simon. My name is Don Neuen. While we go to break, we're going to be back in 2 minutes, so you better do it quick. Trot over to founderscode.com. Bookmark it so that when the show's over, you can go back and study Denise's website. Again, ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to the Drive Time SITREP. We're going to be right back.
Check us out on the web at cowboylogic.us.
to the Drive Time SITREP, ladies and gentlemen. My name's Don Neuen. You've got on the other end of this conversation the stellar Denise Simon. Before we went to break, we were talking about, I'm trying to get Denise to tell me that something I want to hear, which doesn't happen very often. But, full transparency here. Denise, what I'm getting at when I say, what do you believe that Barr has charged Durham with regard to changing this to a criminal investigation? Barr and Durham clearly are speaking on I would say, a semi-frequent basis. And the discussion has had to have come up where Durham is saying, I'm uncovering some things here that could really, really be ugly for some very powerful people in the Obama administration. Are we full throttle on this, or can we not afford to bring these heavy hitters down, which could end up right in Barack Obama's lap?
I could probably tell you more when I finish Lee Smith's book, but I will tell you this. It appears that if I was to have a crystal ball, it appears that all things that were sold to us early on with the Mueller investigation of the Russia collusion and Trump, that all we're going to have to do is just remove Trump's name and put in Barack Obama. And Obama will throw some people under the bus. In fact, Susan Rice has kind of alluded to that with her new book when they sent her out on the 5 Sunday morning shows about Benghazi. But I believe that we're going to see where Halper was, what his role was completely. I think we will see what Mifsud's role was completely, who the coordinator was. And I think that they probably gave it to Brennan. I'm not sure that Clapper had the smarts to do it, but Brennan was able to pull a lot of the strings because of being director of the CIA at the time. And I think the coordination was going between Brennan, Dennis McDonough, and McCabe, Strzok, and Page. I think there's much more to the Strzok-Page deal, especially Strzok, than we know.
Well, he had to have the FBI, and I'm sure your guys, Lee Smith and Andy, are talking about this in their book. He had to have the FBI because as the head of the CIA, he had no law enforcement authority. He had to use the FBI.
Well, they don't either. You have to use the Department of Justice.
Well, yeah, but you know what I'm saying. The CIA cannot do that.
Well, and neither can the FBI when it comes to law enforcement. They know what the law is, and they investigate, and then they build the case and hand it to the Department of Justice for indictments. But the guy that's really very important over at Justice was still Bruce Orr. And
exactly.
And his interesting thing is that he has not been terminated, and we don't want him terminated. We don't want him terminated yet. We want him still within the reach of the government. Okay.
We talked about that a couple of weeks ago.
Right.
But I think that Brennan was using a foolish FBI. And when the FBI realized they were being punked, it was too late. And they didn't do the right thing.
Early on, I was defending Comey. And I am not defending him at all now, but I am not going to make him as complicit in all of this as I am McCabe and Strzok and Page and a few others, because it's very key to me in what I've read so far in Lee Smith's book is that they were just telling Comey, and I had said this about a year ago when I was kind of defending Comey, and I was kind of defending him, that they were telling Comey just enough to just kind of keep him, sort of briefed. But I don't think he knew all the nuances. And I think that was by design. So they had their own, on the top floor of the FBI building, they had their own cabal, but it didn't always spill over into Comey's desk, if you understand what I'm saying.
I do.
Okay. Now,
I don't know if I totally agree.
Well, but I would say this.
Outside of the point of time where Brennan was using the FBI as useful idiots before, and I'm talking about Comey and Strzok and Page and McCabe, but I think Comey knew what was going on and that it wasn't right well in advance, and his failure to say anything is why this continued. Well,
again, I don't think he knew everything, which is the reason that I believe that he was bad for the bureau, because he didn't bother. It didn't look like he bothered to ask. They gave him enough. They said, "Here's what we want you to do," and the here would be your Loretta Lynch's and your Strzucks and your McCabe's and whatnot. Here's what we're going to plot, and this is what we need for you to do when you go have a face-to-face with Trump. But that was kind of, he didn't like him to start with, but I don't think he knew all the reasons not to like him. Do you understand what I'm saying there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Let me ask you a sidebar question here. What is the punishment for sedition?
There's no such thing anymore.
There's no such thing as punishment for sedition or
Correct.
sedition?
Both.
Well, you have many times said there's addition. When I bring up treason, you go, no, this is more sedition.
Yeah, I think we got rid of the Sedition Act in the 60s, I think. I think I looked that up sometime.
Then how could this be seditious?
Well, I didn't say that it was
something.
It doesn't mean it doesn't still exist in its definition. We just don't have the Sedition Act anymore.
Okay, so based on that, one could commit a seditious act without any risk of penalty because we don't have a Sedition Act since the mid-'60s?
Right. The only thing we have now is treason.
Okay. So if sedition and treason, two different things, have now been replaced by treason, how is what they did not treasonous?
Well, I will be able to tell you more when I know more. It clearly appears that we have both a good case. We have a good case building for all of that. But you know me, I'm the meat and potatoes kind of person. I want, just the facts, ma'am. And what we do have, interestingly enough, though, is the Espionage Act, and I believe that's probably if Durham is going to go anywhere, that's where he will go, is to the Espionage Act, because you are using foreign entities to spy, as Barr said in his testimony that day, to spy on American citizens. And those American citizens included George Papadopoulos, Carter Page, who I still don't have a lot of regard for. But anyway, I not that I don't have some regard, but I don't know. He's goofy to me.
You talking about Page?
Yes.
Yeah. Hey, did you heard that Papa D's running for?
Yeah.
What is he running for? The House of Representatives out there?
Yeah, for the woman who just quit.
Right. The swinger. Let's call her the swinger.
Whatever she is.
I heard she might move to the Villages.
Well, crazy things go on there, I can tell you that.
That's why I heard that. Denise, what took place, if it's what you and I and our beloved listeners think took place, there's got to be punishment for this that is off something we haven't seen.
Well, I don't disagree with that. I mean, by the time I get through with this, I mean, where I think today, I would say yes, but I have a sense that when I get through with these two books, it's going to be like, oh my God, I thought I knew a lot, and I'm going to find out that I didn't know nearly enough. Now, the one thing that's pretty fascinating is that's left the headlines completely, that hasn't left mine, because I have all these notes all over my desk, and that is the unmasking. And it appears that as soon as Trump became the nominee, you have to have what they would necessarily call a transition team. You start building one in case you become the president-elect. Well, the Obama administration reached out to some of his intelligence folks, and I would say that would have been Susan Rice and Dennis McDonough and Lisa Monaco and Samantha Power and John Brennan, and said, get me a list of everybody that's on Trump's transition team. Now, we have to go back a little bit, because remember, Trump showed up at the Washington Post bureau one day, and they were interviewing him, and they said, oh, hey, this is media now that they got involved. Hey, dude, who do you have on your foreign policy team? And he really didn't have anybody, but he did mention George Papadopoulos. You see where I'm going? So, with the names that Trump shared with the Washington Post during that interview, they took those, and then I think they went back and started doing all the unmasking requests. Remember that one?
Yeah, I do.
Okay, so there's some things that we have to kind of put together here. The way they come to us are in these snippets, and it's very hard to build all these together. But that tells you that Obama was involved. If he wanted to know everybody was on that transition team, then he was given the list. And Trump was, he didn't know any better at the time, and he just read off some names. Well, those names ended up being those that, Paul Manafort or Carter Page or George Papadopoulos.
Yeah, but the thing is, if you're going into the unmasking, that would all of a sudden very much bring John Kerry and Loretta Lynch into the mix of things, would it not?
Well, I don't know about John Kerry so much. I would say certainly Loretta Lynch.
Mm-hmm.
But we also cannot forget that Christopher Steele was working with Jonathan Weiner, W-I-N-E-R, Weiner, at the State Department, who reported to Victoria Nuland. Victoria Nuland got a copy of the dossier.
Correct.
She gave the copy of the dossier to Kerry. So they were working.
There was also another woman at the State Department, Catherine
Kavalek.
Yes. I think bring them down.
Well,
bring them down. Bring them down.
I have often thought that I really need to just write a very long article and just put these names in there, because I mean, almost every day I could be adding something to the list of names and then adding something in the description of what those people did. The problem is I'd be up to about 6,000 words by about now.
Well, the thing is, a problem with writing an article out like that, you can't wrap your head around it as a reader. It's got to be a flow chart. It's got to be like Glenn did on the chalkboard. You know what I'm saying?
I do, and I will also tell you that Glenn here in the last couple of weeks has been doing some stellar work. He's done part 1 and part 2. Part 3, I think, comes out next week, which is his final part on all things Ukraine. And
I missed part 2, and for the listeners that have not seen that, can you bring me up to speed on part 2?
Well, I've kind of forgotten it now because I've traveled so far since then. But what he was, I think, referring to was the fact that Burisma and a couple of these Ukrainian oligarchs, it's really a bigger case than just Burisma. And he was getting what he was selling to us on about, I think, about 10 chalkboards was pretty much he had obviously had some sit-down time with John Solomon, and he was kind of laying things out very, very carefully on that. He will apparently go to a crescendo here in part 3 next week and kind of wrap it all up, and I think that'll be pretty fascinating. But between
ladies and gentlemen, for those of you that sort of know what Denise is talking about here, you have got to go watch these Glenn Beck specials that he's doing on Ukraine.
For free.
Yeah. Yep. You don't have to subscribe to his Glenn Beck TV stuff or Blaze TV. Part 1, I watched either 2 or 3 times. I did not know that part 2 had come out already.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to go dig that up and find it. But the other thing that she mentioned that really deserves your attention is John Solomon. And he's got a new website, John Solomon Reports. I think it's johnsolomonreports.com.
Mm-hmm.
Man, the guy is doing stellar work. Devin Nunes is doing stellar work. Sarah Carter is doing stellar work. Dan Bongino is doing stellar work. And a host of other true journalists are doing stellar work. Denise, if you want to throw any names into that pot, feel free to do so. I'm driving down the road, and those are the ones that come to mind quickly.
Well, I will tell you, I think between Andy McCarthy and even Jonathan Turley is doing some interesting, because, you know, he's a constitutional law professor. And he takes it from a very serious legal angle on some snippets that kind of come out. He had kind of a interesting piece that I read today that he was referring to the Democrats as I want to say it right, selling whistleblower presidential tracking poll. It's titled, "If Trump is guilty of bribery, the Democrats are guilty of solicitation."
Wow, that's amazing that would come from him.
He's kind of like an Alan Dershowitz. You know, he's kind of an equal opportunity kind of guy too. He just says it like he sees it.
Someone else that I am very pleased with, not necessarily of late, I'm talking the last couple of years, is Greg Jarrett.
He kind of got his life back after he was arrested and all that, didn't he? He remade himself.
Well, I wasn't aware that Greg Jarrett got arrested, but
yeah, he had a bad DUI thing going on, and
I do know that he spent a lot of time on the set with Donna, and he did nothing for me when he was a legal analyst or was working with Donna up at Fox. Both of us are very impressed with the work that he's doing now.
I have not read either of his books.
I haven't either, but you see him all the time on the air.
Yep.
And he speaks well. He keeps me interested in what he's talking about. Anyhow.
Well, the other ones and Judicial Watch. I mean, Judicial Watch is kind of at the mercy when things are released, but Judicial Watch, they're the ones that are coughing up the evidence when documents are released out of FOIA requests.
I listened to Tom Fitton's podcast every time he puts one out. This morning, actually, listened to the one from October 26th, I think. Ladies and gentlemen, go find the Tom Fitton Judicial Watch podcast and check it out. It's about an hour long. He does a great job.
So I don't know how much time we have, but I'll start on some good news.
Hang on, let me see so you know how much you got. 5 minutes, 43 seconds.
Our friend Sidney Powell did a filing last week where I think that she just wants all charges dropped on Flynn. And we do know that he had a hearing, I think that was set for either today or tomorrow, that has been postponed or stopped, suspended. They just took it off the calendar. There has not.
You said canceled last week.
Yes, canceled. Good word, canceled. Well, as of today, she filed another 18-page brief. I had to go look up a word here because I'd never seen it before. But it's titled Mr. Flynn's Sir replay in support of his motion to compel production of Brady material and an order to show cause. The government sought and received permission to file a Sir reply by complaining that the defendant had bootlegged new arguments in his reply. Yet its Sir reply either elides supposedly new material altogether or does not address it in terms. The government's Sir reply is not only in its stunning admissions and untenable paradoxes. According to the government, it has no obligation to produce its superfluity of Brady evidence before Mr. Flynn pleaded guilty because he was not a defendant until he was formally charged, and it had no obligation to produce its cash after he pleaded guilty the same or next day, because his guilty plea erased its obligation. So
right, hold on. Stop right there. Put the Sidney Powell translator on there for us. We all know about Brady, but what is she saying there?
What she's saying is that she demands that the FBI, because now they're saying too that if they've given everything they're going to give and anything else they don't have to, and if there's anything else that they know about that they haven't provided that they can't find. And she's going, no, you're going to go through the Sentinel system. And the Sentinel system is where all the 302s, all the notes, all the everything, that's the database cache file on all documentation for every case. And she's demanding that FBI go through that because it was Lisa Page who changed the 302s on Flynn. She gave the altered 302s on Flynn to Strzok. He looked at them and then he changed them too. So, this is where Sydney's going, hey, this isn't going to work out. So she has this 18-page thing that she's presented to the judge and said, look, this is absolutely not acceptable. Shame on this court. Shame on the government. Shame on the FBI. Shame on Department of Justice. Blah, 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 blah. The government, she says here, the government attempts to gloss over the existence of at least one earlier draft of the Flynn 302 and then ask this court to leap blindly to the conclusion that if it did exist, it contained the same information as the government had already deemed to produce. Aside from this inherent contradiction as explained in Mr. Flynn's reply, the FBI Sentinel system can retrieve any draft, meaning the first one. Drafts are numerically serialized when placed in the systems. Those numbers apparently redacted from the 302 drafts have been produced and will probably provide further information. It's no excuse that the original Flynn 302 is not in the position of Mr. Van Grack at the moment. Rather, his obligation is to reach out to his colleagues and obtain it. Kyle versus Whitley, blah, 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 blah. So she's stating case law. So she knows it exists. She's demanding it. And she's going to stand on the mountain and scream it.
And I can't think, if I was Flynn, I cannot think of anybody I'd rather have representing me than Sidney Powell.
Well, there's actually, there are actually two others.
Well, I know that. But as far as I'm concerned, it's Sidney Powell and the two others.
Right.
Sidney Powell is the frickin' bomb. Ladies and gentlemen, go find her book, Licensed to Lie. I know you've read it, Denise. Donna
No, I haven't. I have not read it.
Oh, man, you got to read it.
I'm just stacked up with books here.
I get it. Just go to Culver's and read Sidney's book.
Yeah, okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're running out of time. We sure do appreciate you joining us tonight. This is the Drive Time SITREP. Please tell your friends and family about it. Go to Denise's website as well, founderscode.com. founderscode.com. Denise, take us home.
Thanks for listening. Thanks for being with us, and God bless America.
Check us out on the web at cowboylogic.us.